And we're off. So at this point, here we go. And I'm going to go ahead and start this off using basics, which is first off, how do you get in to the formative thing? What's probably your smoothest entry point for clicking on to the formative assessment stuff. So one of the things that I like to do to make things easier on me is I've got my little shortcut list up on my Google. And one of those things that I keep a shortcut on is the staff portal. So if you don't have a quickie shortcut for your staff portal, first off, you ought to make one. And second, there it is. So if you just want to click on that link real quick, it should take you to your own staff portal. From there should be a shortcut straight to formative. It's right up there with the big things like Synergy and Help Desk that everyone probably makes use of at some point or another. So go ahead and click into that. And for purposes of making sure that I show all the little steps, I'm going to go ahead and just log out completely. So if it logged in automatically, good for you. If it did not log in automatically, go click the login button. So popping over from formative, this should be the screen that you get after clicking the formative button on the district website. If you click login, you want to log in with Google. Pretty much everything that we have for district purchased stuff, you always want to log in with your district account. Once you do that, do all your continuations, whatever permissions it wants, just let it have it. And that should take you right here into this main screen. Let's see. One of the things that everyone's probably going to want to be able to do is to be able to get your classes into formative at a nice, easy way. And as far as that kind of stuff goes, there's a easy little button push and run that you can do. So on the left-hand side, there's a bunch of stuff. Well, one of them says classes. I think one of the pretty easy ways to get this thing going is if you click on the create button in the top right. And as a quick side note, much of formative has a pretty intuitive basic steps. Usually if there's a big blue button in the top right, that's probably the one that's going to get you to the next step that you want to take care of. So if I were to create a new class, I can, if I go to create a new one, this lets me type in all the details. But when we are so fortunate enough to actually have our classes already filled in automatically through the district, this is going to be your short and sweet version right here, is the roster sync. All you got to do is sync rosters with Google Classroom. Now, I don't have much of anything in there right now, but this is where you would do it. So I've got like my tutorial class thing, which nobody's in it because I kicked everybody out, and all my other classes are archived. But when you do have classes, over here, you hit the import button. It does its thing for a minute, and then ta-da, you got classes. That's all there is to that part. All right, I know I kind of leapt into things, and so far all that we've done is covered how to log in and how to import classes. If y'all have any questions at some point, throw them in the chat or unmute and holler at me. Either one is good. And just as so you guys are aware, a lot of the time I ain't looking at the chat. I'm looking at the screen that I'm showing you. So If someone types something in and it looks like I ain't paying attention, say something. All right. Next up on my just list of stuff that we're going to be doing is how to create an assessment. This one is also pretty basic if you just follow the happy little blue button set. And just as a quick heads up to the beginning, folks, I didn't prep a big, long, pretty slides thing. This is just my list of stuff that we're going to cover. So I'm going to kind of ramble my way on through this. If y'all got questions or want to see how something is done, I'll try to help if I know how. And if I don't know how, I'll tell you I don't know how. Anyway, before we get to the sandbox time, I ought to be able to cover all of these things. Then there'll be a break, and then we'll come back, and hopefully you can mess around with something. All right. Continuing onward. So in the formative home screen, if you want to create an assessment, one of the things way up at the top and the right, like I mentioned earlier, they have this big bright blue button that usually gets you where you want to go. You have a create, and the only thing that I'm going to be messing with is formative assessment. I know there's other things in here like lessons and practice sets. I ain't going to talk about them, mostly because I don't have any experience with them. But let's go ahead and click on formative. It'll kick up a blank formative where you can title it. From here, you can just start adding questions of different types. I'll start to talk about the different types of questions as we're rolling through my checklist. But for those of you who do have like some previous tests that you liked, you can just upload your own file. And the formative stuff does have the ability to port things in from PDFs, from Google Forms. I know I used a lot of Google Forms in the past. So this thing converts things from Google Forms pretty good. You can also dig stuff out of their library. I ain't a fan of that because I really don't trust other people's material that much, but you can play with that if you want. If you have stuff from your drive, grab it there. And if you like to feed the AI monster, then have a blast with that. But what I'm going to be covering is the basic question types. So I'm going to go ahead and grab up one that I had begun earlier. And all I'd like to do with this thing is just kind of go through bit by bit and show you probably the most cooperative question types that people would want to play with. I'm not going to be covering all of them. I'm going to be covering the ones that I have experience with and the ones that I have found to be useful for my own purposes. So I'm going to start off with question type number 1, true false. If you've ever included true false questions, it's really all there is to it here. So I'm going to show you real quick how once you have this thing up and running, how do you actually create questions. There's a little plus button that you can click. And this pops up a whole bunch of stuff, which if you take the time to play with all of these and learn about them, it'll take you a long time. But true false is one of the options. I'm going to go ahead and just show you how to run a basic true false in simple formative. So if I click that button, it'll pop up a blank thing that looks like this. And the cool thing about this is it's automatically got the true false here. You can just type your question for whatever you want to be. Like, let's see, RUNA. district PD thing right now. You want to tell it it's true or false? They already got those pre-programmed. You just pick the thing that you want, and that pretty much takes care of it. Now, there's a lot of other little switches and stuff in here, and I want to talk a little bit about what some of these do. So, first off, answer choice explanations. I'm going to start off with just letting you know, I really don't mess with this. This is something that you can use to elaborate to kids, like why something was right or wrong. If you want to mess with it, fine. Let me know what you learned later. This one, probably not very useful for a true false type question, but show your work pops up as available for pretty much any sort of the questions. The cool thing about show your work is if there's any type of question where you would like to actually see what the student's reasoning process was, if there's anything you want them to show you, or if you just want to give them a piece of digital scratch paper, then turn on show your work. One of the cool things about that is you do have the ability to edit the background. If you just want a plain white image, then don't mess with it. But if you are working something along the lines of, say, graphing, or working with a chart or something, and you wanted to give them a background to work on, you could absolutely do that. All you would have to do for that is just find the right spot to just draw or add images. But I believe most of the time what I would do is I would grab the image option and then just port up an image, whatever I want, be it graph paper or a chart. All that really does is changes up the background for whatever kind of show your work options that you have. Next up, when it comes to, like I know under there, it also has like a use rubric thing. I'm going to mess with some rubric stuff later. For this one, I'm going to just keep it basic. As far as the required button, this is just kind of like the required response, just like you would see on a Google Doc or Google Forms. Basically, if it's required, they got to do it. If you don't click on the required button, they don't got to do it. And up in the top right, you do have the ability to change the points for any individual question. And right next to that, the little triple dot gives you the ability to do basic stuff like feed the AI monster if you want to copy this question. If I just hit copy real quick, like bang, there's the same thing right again. And this is also where I can use it to move up and down or delete it. Now, I do think when it comes to like the moving option off to the side, if you've got this little sidebar thing open, it's got your different questions that you have laid out here. And probably one of the easiest ways to scoot things around is like that. I find that one's probably handier than the manual move option. All right, popping right along. Multiple choice. This has got to be probably one of the most basic types that anyone ever messes with. And the cool thing about the multiple choices, I think for this one, is that it doesn't seem to really have a limit to how many multiple choice options that you want. So if you would like to throw out a ridiculously overwhelming question with 20 options, you can do that. It is your prerogative as a teacher. But if you want to limit it to 2 or 3 or however many you decide, you can do that. All you do is type your question here. So let's see. So which one is the answer? And then you just run through your options. Made up stuff, folks. Some things I do want to point out here is that you do have the ability to kind of make some of your questions and your options a little bit snazzier. So up here where I just type this thing in, you do have the ability to mess with color. Basically like your text editor options are available. I have subscripts, superscripts. This latex thing is it's kind of a way that you can use to present usually mathematical style things in a better formatting. So I might demonstrate that one a little bit later, but if you're a math type person, that could probably be handy. There's also links available in here as well. And here's one of the things that is probably very useful to most folks. Off to the side, there is a add enriched content section. And then for this one, you got options. So this is one of those things where if you would like to have an image be the question, you can do that. If you want to type in like a full-blown equation, you can, if you decide that you learn to fight the equation editor. But there's definitely lots of stuff that you can do in here. If you want to make a video, go for it. But it's pretty cool to just kind of mess with some of this stuff. Usually the thing that you were wanting to do is going to be one of the options in there. And when it comes to the multiple choice responses, you have this stuff pop up as well. So I think the times that I find this to be most useful is if I want one of my multiple choice responses to actually be an image, I can make that happen. If I want it to be an equation, I can make that happen. I have not messed with anything other than image and equation for my class, but if you have used to check out some of the other things, then I'd say good for you. Now, this particular type of question, the multiple choice, has some other more click boxes down at the bottom than something like the true or false does. You can see this one only had 3. This one's got 5. Now, the first one, like the explanations, like I said, I don't mess with that. But the randomized order is just basically your multiple choice shuffle button. And then there's this one, which I definitely want to address for a little bit. And they have an allow partial credit. So if I was to say that this particular question was worth several points, and it doesn't even go ahead and tell us how much we want this to be worth. If I want this to be worth 2 points, and you click on that button, it lets you be able to decide just how many points individual questions are worth. I'm going to go ahead and clean out all my nothing questions. And when it comes to allow partial credit, there are some options, which I'm going to show you when they come up to multiple select, which has to do with the way that they score these things. But in any case, partial credit is a thing that you can do to show your work in the required. I already talked about those. All right, folks, real quick, check on you guys. So I've been rambling for like 20 something minutes. Y'all hanging in there? Is there any particular thing that you'd like me to address at this point, or shall I continue my ramble? All right, I saw a hand go up. I don't know how to like push buttons to make that happen, but say your piece. Any translation tools?
It was an accident.
Oh, no worries. And as far as translation tools, I'm going to have to say as a beginner, I don't know. So if there's someone that's more of a pro than me at this, maybe they know the answer. But I have not ever messed with any translation tools in Formative. Anything else at the moment? All right, back to the ramble. So we are up to multiple select. So popping down here, this is the kind of question where there are multiple options that could be true. So, like, let's see, what rhymes with dog? So, what do we got? Let's say, like, what? Oh, cat, log, hog. Oh, we got like, oh, we cannot see. I should probably fix that. There we go. All right. So, as far as this thing goes, multiple selection, this is the kind of option where you can decide which ones are the correct answer. So, what rhymes with dog? Well, I guess that would be log and hog. So, I'm going to show you a little bit about the partial credit stuff going on here. Let's say that we wanted this to be a 2-pointer because there's 2 correct answers. And we want to give them full credit if they get both of them. So the randomized order thing, already talked about that. It's a shuffle. But at this point, allow partial credit, you can see has some options down in here, which is do not subtract points for incorrect answers or subtract points for incorrect answers. So do not subtract points for incorrect answers has a little bit of a weak spot for questions like this. So the way that the machine will auto score this question is they will get full credit if they have all of the correct answers selected, which means if a student submitted this response where all 4 options were selected, the computer would say, hey, all correct responses have been selected. And then they would give them the full 2 points. So this is one of the situations where it would be appropriate to tell the machine to subtract points for incorrect answers. So it's worth mentioning that this option here, I found this out the hard way, is basically the scoring that you might expect. So if they have a correct response, they will get the point for a correct response. If they do not have a correct response selected, they won't get the point for that. For example, what rhymes with dog? If they had failed to select hog, this would score them as 1 out of 2 points. And later in the presentation, I'm going to show you how you can actually go check to see how the scoring is going to work. I will get to that. But if it's not subtracting points for wrong, then this is 1 out of 2 because, hey, log rhymes with dog. They got that one right. They missed that one, so they don't get that point. Even though that this one is wrong and this one is wrong, it would still score that as 1 out of 2. But if we do subtract points for incorrect answers, and what that does is it does the same thing as before. Like, for instance, this would be a score of 1 out of 2 points. This would be a score of 2 out of 2 points. But now what it's going to do is anytime that the student selects a wrong answer, it's going to subtract a point. So even though they have both of the right answers selected, but cat is wrong, it would take their 2 points and take 1 away. If they selected elephant as well, it would take the 2 points that they got right for log and hog, take 1 away for elephant and 1 away for cat, knocking them down to 0. This is actually important if you decide to do this kind of question, because once again, if you have this selected, the kids could just hit every single checkbox and they would get full credit for that question. Let's see. You guys got any questions about that particular bit? Because honestly, what this button did, as someone who just started pushing buttons in January, it was not clear to me from the get-go. So I wanted to make sure that I made it clear to y'all. Good? Rock and roll. All right. Popping right along. A short answer is another one of those things that is very useful if you have a specific answer that is the correct answer. So let's go like a math classic here. We'll say like, what is 2 plus 3? And I can add a correct answer and say, oh, 2 plus 3 is 5. If you had another correct answer, if you thought, oh, what if somebody says that the answer is 5 and they want to type it out? You can do that. The cool thing about the short answer auto grading is that it is not case sensitive. So when it came to things like, I believe the old Google Forms was very case sensitive. That caused a lot of complications. So that's not the case here. But if the student types in either a 5, be it numeric or spell it out, it would score that one as correct. As far as the partial credit on these things, well, I'll tell you what, I've never messed with partial credit for that type of thing. So I don't know what to tell you about that. The case sensitivity, you can choose to make it case sensitive. This is also where the show your work could be a handy thing if you want to give the kids a digital scratch paper. The rubric, honestly, I ain't messed with rubric very much, so I can talk about that. And then just the can they, is it required or is it not? But this particular style of question is kind of really handy if you would like to avoid the multiple choice cliche type ideas. If you wanted to make sure that the students are actually going to respond directly to a question, and then it has to be correct. It's also kind of nice, like later I'll show you how to look at their responses and stuff. And so if you found that some student typed an answer that was correct, that was not in your list of correct stuff, you have the ability to put their answer in the answer bank pretty quickly. All right, popping along. Drawing. This one, I think, leans really hard into folks that want their students to show their work, but they don't want to add like the extra show your work box. This is for those teachers that like to grade the process rather than the answer. And really all there is to this type of question. So if you had like the what is the 2 plus 3, and you wanted them to provide a written response, then all they have to do is pop open their stylus or pop out their stylus, scribble away. They can type it out, like 2 plus 3 equals 5, hit submit, good to go. All right. Here's a fun one that I got, or at least I think it's fun. So categorize is a handy one that I have found pretty darn useful. I know with physics, sometimes there is categorization, but I also find it's generally good for like if you wanted a nice stack of true false or any pair or any section of things where you're categorizing things into 2 or more sections. So the cool thing about this one, and let me go ahead and just pop up a blank one so you can see where these are built from. You get to decide the categories, whatever those happen to be. You type up the draggable items. And when it comes to what answer belongs in what category, all you really do is you just go ahead and drag them into their appropriate spot. So you guys help me out with this stuff real quick. Since this is true or false, what do you think? And if you don't know these people, fine, I pick people that I know. Mr. Mata is nice. What do y'all think? What should I put that one in? So we got a note from the source himself. So let's say, is Mr. Mata nice? Even though apparently some folks think Mr. Mata is pretty awesome, he's like, no. So we'll go false. Mr. Mata is nice, false. Miss Leasing is tall. If y'all know Miss Leasing, we could say the answer to this one is pretty solid. What do we think? Yes, Miss Leasing is very tall, isn't she? I think she towers over certain students of a particular stature. This guy, Mr. Mendoza, the great hero of the thousands, is he the best teacher ever? What do you think? If you don't know him, who is he? Well, so Romero doesn't know who he is. Anyone else know who that guy is? Maybe not. Oh, what do you think? Is Mr. Mendoza the best teacher ever? Ah, okay. So we're going to say, like, he must be the best teacher ever, just because. Mr. Tisdale is mean. I'm going to go ahead and stick with, like, true, just because. And then Mr. Allen likes hats. So what do you think, Mr. Allen? Do you like hats? Are you there? No, he doesn't. Well, it's okay, Amy. Honestly, this is just kind of a bunch of people that I have rooms fairly near to and that I talk to a lot. So that's why I can pick on them. But does Mr. Allen like hats? I don't know. I've seen him wear hats a lot, but maybe he doesn't like them. I'm not sure. In any case, all I wanted to do here, as far as the formative goes, is to show you this is how you tell the machine what the answers are. This is also one of those sections where the points system comes into play pretty good. So if there was 5 options and you said, oh, I want to make sure that they get the answers completely correct, like all 5 of them, you could set that up. And sometimes I'm not very clear on how the machine is grading them. And so, like I said earlier, I will show you how that how you can check on that little bit toward the end of my continued rant. But in any case, this one had a little bit of extra stuff compared to some of my others. One of them was reuse answer choices. So if you allow that to be a thing, then I guess that we can probably have what Mr. Mata is nice is false. Maybe Mr. Mata is nice is also true. So yeah, it's both true and false. That's not contradictory, right? Of course not. But that's what reuse answer choices allows you to do. That's randomized orders, just shuffle them. Show your work is also digital scratch paper. Again, required is required. I already talked about those. Scooting along. Fill in the blank. Okay, this one I think is a kind of useful for a nice sort of organization. It's very much kind of like short answer. So for instance, I could say that the question is 2 plus 3 equals, And then I can either add a text blank or add a math blank. Now, the math blank just gives them access to like a big fancy equation editor stuff. So most of the time, unless your math responses are extremely complicated, you're just going to want to go with a regular old text blank. And down here, blank one text, this is basically your opportunity to type in what the correct answer is. So if you want them to type a 5 in that spot to get the point, you put in a 5 there. That's basically all there is to fill in the blank. It's also worth noting that you could stack questions here. So I could have another one right underneath it. It's 1 plus 5 equals. I can add another text blank. And now I have a blank number 2 text, which I can type in the appropriate number for that. So you can have as many of these as you want in here. And this is another one of these opportunities where you could offer more than 1 point. If you like to do the 1 point per question thing or whatever your preference is, you can do that. This also allows you to open up the partial credit one. And I think this particular style would be the one that benefits from not subtracting points for incorrect answers. Because if they get this one wrong, like let's say the student, this is worth 2 points, and let's say they got this one correct, and saying, oh, 1 plus 5 is 6. That one's right. But what if they said 2 plus 3 is 6? Well, if that was the case, they would get 1 point for getting this one correct. They would get no points because that one was wrong. And if you subtract points for incorrect answers, it would take away another point because that was wrong. So if they got one right and one wrong in the situation, and you said subtract points for incorrect answers, that would score this one as a 0. So little things like this that I've found is helpful for trying to make sure that the machine scores things the way that you want the machine to score things. All right, scooting on. Inline choice is good for, you can kind of think of this as like a multiple choice style question within the context of an answer. So I'll do like a basic physics style question and say energy due to motion is considered to be, and then I'm going to add a drop down right there and have something there. And so for my options, I'd want this to say, well, maybe one of the answers would be kinetic, the one that would be correct, or potential. And so I would tell it, oh, the answer is kinetic. And so what this would look like from a student point of view is they click on a little drop-down menu and it'll pop up the list. They'll see kinetic and potential, and then they have to select the correct one. This one is also worth noting that you can do more questions that have something as the right answer. And so now the drop down 2 has options. Now whatever the right answer for the second one was can pop up there. And it doesn't, like, I don't believe there's in much of a limitation into how many options that you want. So you can have a lot of options in your inline choice or just a few, and it's really up to you. All right, popping along. Matching. Matching is very much like what it looks like. So it's a quick little example thing. I was messing with the rhyming things earlier. So what match the rhyming pairs? And if we had Dog, bug is one of them. I can add another matching pair. Cat, rat. And you can add as many matching pairs on this thing as you want. And I think this is also one of those that lends itself to not subtracting points for incorrect answers. So if this was like a three-way match and I said, hey, I want this to be worth 3 points to give them 1 point per correct match, it would do it if they lined them up. And this one, I'm also going to show you how to preview things in a minute. Basically works as like a drag and drop for the kids. So I'll show you what that looks like toward the end of my rambling. And I think that hit like all the main question types that I have found to be pretty useful when it comes to formative. So what I'd like to show you now is the previewing the assessment. And this is really, really useful because this is your chance to see what the test looks like from the perspective of the kiddos. So up here on the top right, no matter how I scroll around here, it's got this preview button. I'm going to click on preview. And it even gives you an option like, well, do I want it to be in phone format? I usually pick laptop because you figure that if the kids are testing it, they're probably using a Chromebook. And so I'll go ahead and make this full screen and pop over here so you guys can see that. So this is everything that I was just typing in. And now this is going to give me the opportunity to go and preview this test like I was the one taking it. And so here are the questions. So am I a district PD thing right now? And say, yeah, I am. And then I can click next or click on the number 2. Which one was the answer? This one. I don't even remember what I put as the answer if I told it which one is the answer. But this is also one of those things that where you can work out those bugs. What rhymes with dog? Be like, oh, maybe it's cat and log. 2 plus 3. And this is the like the drawing one. So this would be the part where I could say like, oh, the kid, right? It's the stuff. And this is their response. And this particular type of thing, you, I suppose you could write a rubric if you wanted to do something like that. Otherwise, you just kind of know your stuff and then grade it as appropriate. So like that is the response. Well, that's that blank one I threw in. And this one, you can kind of see they have the drag and drop stuff. And because I had clicked the answers can be reused, every one of these could get thrown into either one. I think probably not very practical in that particular sense. But if you had the no, you cannot reuse answers, the options, then each one of these can only get slid over one time. Here's that one with the fill in the blank, so you can answer your stuff. They're like, oh, that's 5 and that's 5, right? Right? Of course. Moving on. I want to show you some results here at the end. This one, energy in motion. There's my little pop down. That's a kinetic. More questions that have, I never set up the answer for that one. So this would be a point where like if like, oops, I forgot to put an answer in there. Then I could go back into the formative and say, oh, I better go back over here and go find that question and fix it. And so that's one of those points where I would be able to do that if I found that that was a mistake. All right, coming back over here, match the rhyming pairs. And just to point out, the way this one looks from the kid's point of view is this is kind of like a just drag and drop, and it just kind of flips things. So dog log, bed rat, cat red. 3 out of 3, rock and roll. Submit. One incomplete question may affect my overall score. I think the incomplete question, anytime I put on show your work, it's going to pop this up. And if I made the questions required, it will not ever give the students an option to submit without completing a required question. But it'll pop up this prompt if they did not show their work. If you require shown work, you probably want to use the drawing option instead of the show your work tab. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put that up there. And what I would like to do at this point is pop back over here. And the next thing that I'm going to kind of jump past the assignment thing, and I want to look at the results real quick. So if I look at the responses, this is how you can see what the kids did. And you can see that this is, here's me. So here's this question. Are you in a district PD thing right now? I said, true. I got that wrong. It's like, why did I get that wrong? Well, it's because I put the answer was false. Which is the answer, this one. So this is how you can kind of go in and see bit by bit which, like how are things being scored. I think ones like multiple choice are pretty basic. This is one where like, okay, what rhymes with dog? I got the log one, so it scored me 1 out of 2. But I do want to go back and point out that this was one of those questions where I said, do not subtract points for incorrect answers. So if I do subtract points for incorrect answers, and then I go look back over here. Oh, I told it cat and log was the thing. Honestly, that response is confusing me right there. I'm not sure why it's not scoring that as worse since I selected everything. I figured in that case, it should be giving me like no points.
Tisdale, you have
Yep.
to uncheck the answers that are wrong. You check them all as right.
Oh, so that's a good point. So if I actually had like a correct answer programmed in, and this is a cool thing to kind of demo how that would work, because usually if you fix things on the spot, it also fixes the grading on the spot. So that's kind of one of the cool things about that. In any case, all of the responses, the way that they are graded in here, you can see exactly what's going on there. If something is not grading the way that you think it ought to be graded, this is where you can figure out, is it doing what I think it should be doing or is it not, which is really useful. And then finally, I'm kind of skipping back to the number 6, assigning an assessment. And assign has been floating at the top right for a while here. It's even over here in the edit screen, but I want to pop this up for a minute. And I don't really have any students that I can assign it to, but I'm going to say that I'm throwing it into this and still my options are here. So these, under the quick start thing, these are some super baby shortcuts. Honestly, I usually don't mess with this kind of stuff. I like to work the details myself. So if you like to do open or close times, you can do that. Due dates, you can run them. If you want to time a test, you can do that. The total attempts, you can actually set a value between 1 and 4, or tell them they have as many attempts as they want. After the submission, like after they finish and they hit the submit button, you can either hide the results, like, well, this is, they can see what they submitted, but they can't make any changes. This one, make hidden, won't even let them see like what their score is at this point. Or if you allow edits, they can go back and see or change their responses until they're happy with the responses. I found that that is very useful if you want to use Formative for a practice more than a formal testing. When it comes to returning scores, if you choose instantly, they will get feedback as they are going through the formative on whether or not their questions are correct. This one has a little bit of a snag. Like if I tell the students, or if I program this to return scores instantly and allow edits at the same time, a lot of the time what you'll get, especially for multiple choice style things, is click happy students that will just pop through your multiple choice options until it shows them that it's correct. So I don't recommend this particular setup if you want the students to think more about their questions, or at least not if you're using multiple choice. As far as the other options in here, don't show scores is like they don't even get to know what they made until you decide it. And then when closed is after you assign a formative, you do have the ability to open and close them. So if it is a test that you were wanting to set up, and then you opened it up for a particular class period, and then when the testing is over, you can close it. Kind of like it worked in the old synergy thing, if you've ever dealt with the district synergy testing. As far as the correct answers, this is like it'll show them correct answers after they hit submit. It won't show them at all, or it'll show them after you have closed the test. As far as content display, each item is a separate page, is basically just meaning that every question pops up on its own little screen, and it's not just a big long scroll down thing. You can randomize question order. This one, the secure exam browser mode, is very useful if you want to increase the security on your tests. For this one, found that the respondus medium security is usually probably the most effective without snagging things up too much. The cool thing is if you do engage the security, you can actually set up things like a quit password, like the kids can't quit without a password. I have not done that myself. Disable pause is also like, no, you're not allowed to pause the test. The learning tools. You want to give them like a calculator access? You can. You even have options, basic scientific and graphic. Accents keyboard doesn't really apply to my content, but if it applies to yours, these options are available. And then the spell check if you decide that you want students to have access to a spell check. I myself have not done anything here except the calculator because I didn't need it. But I have used the entry password. This one can be useful if you have opened up a test and you are providing a test in the classroom. You have posted the test on your Google Classroom, but say you have a student at home who happened to notice that the test was posted, and they decide they're going to click on it and take the test from the comfort of their own bedroom without any supervision. They can do that if you have the test opened and they have a link to the test. But if you set an entry password, then every student has to know the entry password in order to access the test. So that's an extra level of security. Like I said, it's mostly just useful to make sure that students who are not present do not access your formative. Let's see here, student management and stuff. If you want to assign this to particular students, you can do this. Honestly, for me, I'm usually assigning things to everybody, or I'm not assigning it. And then unassigning a formative, I usually don't mess with that either. So once I get all that stuff in, I can take this and assign and post to Google Classroom. That's usually the one that I will go to. And let me go ahead and update this thing. And now at this point, over here, this is all updated. So earlier I had mentioned the closing a test. So on this screen where I had pointed out, you can see results right next to the test spot. I have all of these options. Adjust settings pops back that exact same screen that we were just looking at. So if you ever need to go and make changes to any of the details that you worked out, that's what you would do it in. It also has nice little quickies like close assignment, because once that assignment is closed, even if a student has the assignment open, it will shut them down immediately. You want to close the test at the end of class and you hit that close assignment, it's closed. You hit it by accident, you want to open it back up, no problem. It opens it back up. And folks, that was mostly the completion of my great ramble. So I'm going to figure out how to stop recording.